Facebook Live.
You're on in 2 and 1.
Hey, hi everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my friends, depending where you are. Where I am, it's 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on February the 8th, 2020. And this is a beautiful California sunny day. How about that? I'm Emily Windsor-Craig, and this is History Reset, brought to you each Saturday by People's Internet Radio in Ireland and Radio Act TV in Jerusalem, Israel, to bring valuable information to the public that corporate media refuse to divulge. Also academia, okay. This program is a public service, but you are welcome to please donate to People's Internet Radio and keep People's Truth coming at you without commercial adverts. Tonight's History Reset show is about humanity's obsession over doctrines and theories and avoidance of facts. And I think what I want to do is talk a little bit about how I got into this, okay? You know, I was a foster kid. I was in a family that were into Marxist theory, the end justifies the means. Religion is the opiate of the people, and they had memes, and they had sayings that they repeated to each other over and over again. And because I was a goy, I was an outsider in their family, I wasn't treated like the rest of the family. They made it real clear to me that I was an outsider. And what that did was prepare me to figure out and look into, well, what am I supposed to do now? You know, who do I belong to? Where's my home? Who's my family? Okay. And that aim, that purpose, that goal has been pushing me along for a whole lifetime now, 75 years. Okay. And what I have finally realized is that the teachings of the original occupying, conquering civilization that are described in Sumerian cuneiform tablets and in the Voyagers series of Ash'ar-nad-Din describe the problem-solving method of that conquering civilization, the Anunnaki, all right? Now, the Anunnaki, when they came here 450,000 years ago, had been a spacefaring civilization for quite a while. They are very, very mercantile. They had overcome aging. They were no longer challenged by the fourth dimension, which is time. They were in the fifth dimension. And so time was not a big issue for them, all right? They knew how to withstand long periods of time. And their hierarchy had a method of dealing with social, civil problems, okay? And here's how their hierarchy operated. And this is on holyconservancy.org/2829.html. This is their belief system. 1, creation is all one. As above, so must the lower levels align in their points of view, doctrines, and manifest love. They believed that the third density was going to have to align with their thinking. 2, experience is mental. A heart receives no input from a physical will. Their experience was all mental, and based on the treaties of the galaxy in the era, the eon when they got here, there was no need to have empathy for these critters, these creatures, these hominids that they were conquering. 3, as thoughts go, like attracts like. Naturally, without law. Therefore, every good thought attracts the good, but every disruptive thought must be sublimated and forbidden access. In the mental world, like attracts like. You attract thoughts from those whose auras are similar to yours. In physical third density, where time exists, physics doesn't work that way. If you know anything about electronics or electricity, opposites attract, okay? The wealthy attract predators. The weak attract predators, okay? So here in third density physical, like attracts like is not true. Opposites attract is what is true. And this is the crux of the matter, why we've gotten ourselves in so much trouble. Okay, now, silence is golden. One must speak only when spoken to from above. Bad reports are resented. Gossip is forbidden. Okay, this is why today whistleblowers are disappeared, heart attacked, suicided, and gotten rid of, because the elites still believe that people who complain are criminal. All right, next. There is no personal truth that cannot manifest in eternity. Thus, reality is an illusion, and the soul is responsible only for his or her own inner harmony. There's no such thing as truth. This is what our children are being taught in school, is that there's no such thing as truth. And it has a lot to do with the fact that our children are accepting leftist methods of destroying civil authority and civil governance that have no limits or boundaries based on any form of law or morality. Okay, it explains a lot. Okay, communication is by chain of command. Seek, try, promise, vow, and all temporal arrangements have zero value because every good thought can manifest of its own energies. This is why the occult and the New Age people do not adhere to any agreement, contract, or covenant, because they don't believe that they are real. Okay? Wrong or disharmonious or non-PC thoughts are nipped in the bud with social sanctions before they can manifest bad outcomes. Okay? Bad outcomes being crimes against political correctness. Thus, thought controls are absolute in 5th D. Okay? Under the Emerald Covenant titles, humanity can be called sacrificed en masse as a form of eugenics or hierarchy command if those people convey wrong cultural beliefs, though innocent of any physical crimes of harm or deceit. That in a nutshell is the philosophy and the way of being of the ETs that originally conquered our world. And it is also the way of being of the Masons, the Jesuits, the Rosicrucians, the chivalric orders, the elites who follow the Illuminati occult philosophy of doing business. It's the basis for the intellectual enlightenment that occurred about 500 years ago, when it was decided that what constituted education was building theories of operation, building theories in theology, theories in ideology, theories in democracy and republicanism and anarchy. And you see where there's a cynicism and there's nihilism and there's labels for each of the sets of theories that are being built by scholars in academia to explain whatever they're trying to explain. All right. In the meantime, problems have occurred and existed that haven't been noticed very much. And so I made kind of a laundry list, kind of an eschatological laundry list of things that we ought to know by now, but somehow we haven't nailed these down yet, okay? And the first one has to do with astronomical physics. I have in my folders pictures of the universe, okay, the pictures of the universe. And the universe, we know it's a torus, and there's a central galaxy, and there are 12 zodiac galaxies, a galaxy around the central. And some people place our world on the ecliptic, on an outer ring of the ecliptic, and others place our world on the floor of the universe cavity underneath the Milky Way, directly underneath Sirius. Since we know this, how come our children don't know it? How come our children cannot describe to us or show us or refer us to a picture of what our universe looks like? Well, that's my question. How did that come to be that our children are not informed about what our universe actually looks like? And what about the calamity that left this world sitting in a puddle of water and ice at the bottom of the center of the Milky Way galaxy directly under Sirius? How did our world, which the theories state is a spinning sphere? I don't know, do you have a washing machine in your house? Tell me something. What happens to the water at the bottom of the tub when the washing machine goes into spin cycle? Okay, so what should the water at the South Pole be doing? All right, that's one problem. Another problem is that photographs taken from high altitude show a flat horizon when they shouldn't show a flat horizon. Okay, there's all kinds of problems about what is the shape of the world that we are walking around on. And these problems, for some reason, haven't really been resolved, as if it were not possible to resolve it. We have the divide and conquer exercise of the flat earthers who think it's like a pizza versus the spinning ball earthers who think it's like a spinning ball. And then there's the concave earthers and the inner earthers, and we haven't nailed down yet where we are. Now, come on, you know, this is kind of crazy after all these hundreds of years of presumably serious study. How come we don't know what we're standing on? All right. Next. Oh, and this talk, this presentation, this series is going to become a web page with all of the links I can still find, because some of the links that I used to have are no longer active. And I've given you my page of links, and that's what I'm gonna, connect all of these dots for you. Okay. Now, the conquest of this world by Anunnaki ETs 450,000 years ago is known in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and you know and I know that they didn't carefully with their stylus in clay and then harden it so it would last for hundreds of thousands of years. That wasn't a fictional story. No human leader in their right mind will write a fictional story just for amusement, okay? Going to that level of difficulty, particularly when this account and this account and that account and that account all merge and meld, okay? All right, so the Anunnaki, or Anunnaki, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, they had and have an imperial culture, all right? And their imperial culture is described in a very, very specific tone and tenor by the Bishop Alexander Hislop, who was an Anglican bishop who published The Two Babylons in 1858. all right, so 160 years ago. He tracked and traced the Anunnaki, Babylonian, Assyrian, Grecian, Roman, Tartarian culture down through the ages, how it has remained intact, all right, all the way to today's globalism, because today's globalists are still at CERN doing satanic and Luciferian rituals just straight out of the worship of Baal and Moloch going back how many centuries, all right? So the Age of Pisces Galactic El-Anu Treaty actually formalized the civilization of the Anunnaki into treaty law, all right? They supported the sacrifice of dissidents. They supported civil vices. They supported sexual profligacy, slavery, and population culling by race. Okay, that was in the El-Anu Treaty. And as we'll see later, it's also in the Greada Treaty, and it's obverse. It's the presence of human rights and natural rights, the right to life, and all of that is absent in commercial contemporary treaties. All right, so all of that is not generally recognized or taught, that the discovery principle of just going to a place and showing up and setting your flag in it and claiming that it's yours and killing off everybody who's there, the discovery principle, is exactly what has been going on this world ever since, even while political leadership, churches, academia, scholars have been claiming all the while, oh, we believe in peace, we believe in human rights, we believe that people ought to be able to live in peace, while all of these sacrificial and warmongering practices have been going on. So the practice of double dealing, treachery, of speaking from the right-hand path of truth, but operating from the left-hand path of the dark side, has been going on all this time through all of these Anunnaki-based civilizations going back all the way to the beginning. Now, you say, well, that makes the Anunnaki very evil people. But they really were operating from their own perspective that in their fifth dimensional existence did no harm. And they were dealing with consumable objects, products of the Galactic Treaty that had no value in the mind of the ones who wrote the Galactic Treaty, all right? So the Anunnaki are just simply following the policies and procedures of the hierarchy over their head, all right? And the fact that the planetary sovereign, who is known in the Urantia book and the Oahspe and the Bible as Yahweh, didn't like and didn't agree with their method of organizing society, had something else in mind, never really comes up much, you know? There's the fight between Satan and God, between Satan and Jesus, but it's not really articulated as one civilization confronting a different civilization, which needs to have been known, right? There is a lot of prehistoric anomalies. There are dozens and dozens of symmetrical pyramids all over the world, and in Kosovo and China and South America and under huge forested areas that have never been acknowledged by anthropology or paleontology anthropology and paleontology have been busy proving that humans have only been human for about 6,000 years, and before that they were stone people. That was never true. The technology of the earliest human settlements, the pyramids in Kosovo, have been shown to be 25,000 years old, and they're very advanced compared to what we do now. All right, so we are not told the truth about the age of civilization. There's also a lot of stone technologies in Siberia. In Siberia, according to New Earth, the anthropologists on YouTube, okay, there are airports where there are no cities, and there are dams where there are no rivers. That's what's going on in Siberia. Okay. Next, we have the alteration of chronology. And how did this come up? If you start investigating the mud flood phenomenon and the Tartarian Empire and the orphan trains and the reset maps, okay, and even in the 17th century, California was an island, okay, that geologists today are not aware of. Okay, we have not been studying our old maps to the extent that we should be, all right? So the alteration of chronology occurred, and there's a whole movement of dissident chronologists who are saying, you know, this is what we get isn't the correct chronology. One of the things that comes up in the mud flood maps is that around the year 400 or so, the map makers began adding an I or a J in front of the year of the production of the map. And after that, because it was supposed to be the year of our Lord Iesu. That was supposed to be an abbreviation for Jesus, okay? But it came to represent a 1,000-year interval, which has been accepted as valid by scholars and in error. If we remove the I or the J in front of the year, that removes about 1,000 years of our chronology. And what backs up that removal is the simple fact that in the Hebrew Bible, Jesus Christ was born in 3 BC, but in the Qalbrin Bible, he was born in 1072 AD. So that we're not in the year 2020 right now. What year we're in is going to need to be studied, but there seems to have been a necessity for the hierarchy to change the official version of what year it was. All right, so there's a problem we have to deal with. All right, next, the creation of Islam was by the Vatican, and that is ordinarily known. And the reason for it was to produce martyrs and saints for their festivals, because people living in perfect peace in a kingdom of God situation have nothing to suffer over. Okay, so you need to talk to the Jesuits about that problem. Why? Because in the intervening 1,400 years, hundreds of millions of peaceable people have been annihilated, and whole areas not only depopulated but repopulated with a, quote, holy book that promotes taqiyya, which is double dealing, jizya, which is protection tax racketeering, and jihad, which is divide and conquer. And so we have a religion in our midst whose holy book teaches behavior that's unlawful wherever they show up. This is a problem. We're going to have to figure out what to do with that one. All right. Next, the burning of women who doubted or questioned authority as witches by the churches. You know, the churches have never really fessed up to that, and they've never really atoned for it, and they've never made a realistic assessment of the gifts of the genders in the churches. Now, in ancient indigenous civilizations, there wasn't just two genders. There was 5. There was the alpha male, the beta male, the intersex, neutral, androgynous, the alpha female, and the beta female. All right. But the church has never confronted that reality. And the church's obsession with bloodline and bloodline families and just simply shunning and pushing everybody else out has not helped the desire or the work to create civil societies in which there's room for everybody. All right. So the burning of witches has never been atoned for. All right, the First World War. It was not in 1812. Okay. Indeed, in the 1770s, the Masonic orders came forward with a plan for a nation that would in fact stand for natural and human rights, it was the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. But within a very short period of time, Napoleon, who represented the empire and its ethos, commercial ethos without regard to morality, was pushing the boundaries against Russia and against Wellington in Normandy. And so the War of 1812 was the original pushback of Europe against the world order empire of Napoleon. And it's a good thing that they didn't get too ensconced in the North American continent, or the New World Order would have sullied things up a lot sooner than they did. All right. Next, the extent and character of the Tartarian Empire since its balkanization and apocalypse in the 1820s to 1840s is untold. Okay, we have maps available, and you look at, this is all about History Reset and the mud flood, and there are many sites now dealing with these maps and these documents that show that Tartaria was the empire from what begins at Moscow and goes all the way to the Pacific Ocean for a long time. And Tartaria had a characteristic architecture that is found all over the world, including it's in Japan, it's in India, it's in Indonesia, it was in Greece, it was in Rome, it was in St. Petersburg, it was all over the world, and all of a sudden it just disappeared. But our historians are not telling us what happened. Where did Tartaria go? And why was it destroyed, literally, virtually off the face of the planet? The one thing I have discovered about Tartaria is that its capital was in Berlin, Germany, all right? And you can tell that looking at the buildings in Berlin, Germany, because the buildings and the plazas are in imperial scale. And for every 4 floors in an old building, the new buildings have 6 floors. Berlin was built by people who were 8 feet tall, not 6 feet tall. They were bigger than life. And Berlin was built for a population that is now absent. That's really interesting. Apparently, there are a lot of Tartarian buildings still standing in Germany, but they're not discussed. They're not discussed, all right? And so Tartaria kind of disappeared in the 1820, 1840s, okay? And there's this mud flood that hit, and the buildings in Berlin show the same basement level having been covered up as in St. Petersburg, Russia, as in St. Louis, Missouri, as in New York, as in Paris, and as in London. There was a mud flood all over the known world sometime in the 1820s, 30s, 40s. We've never been told about. Our historians don't deem that we are worthy to know the truth about what happened in the 19th century with respect to some kind of mud apocalypse, some kind of Battle of Armageddon. I don't know, was the word of 1812 the Battle of Armageddon? Who knows? Who knows? All right. So that apocalypse is untold. But what happened after that, or during that time, is called the Verona Treaty. The Verona Treaty was an absolute repudiation of the independence of the United States and its Constitution to make the 10 amendments works: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association, habeas corpus, freedom from undue search, and so on and so forth. The Verona Treaty turned around everything that had been written in the US Constitution. And the elites went for it, because after that, the consolidation of banking and the cynical mechanization caused by the robber barons of industry continued apace, as if the workers were not worth the shirts on their back, okay? Also during that time in 1834, the culling in North America of tribes by deliberate disease was rationalized by the church, and no effort has been made to atone for indigenous genocides, nor was the Indian Removal Act of 1834 that sent the Cherokee tribe on a death march from North Carolina to Oklahoma. It was passed by Congress in violation of all of the human rights in the 10 amendments to the Constitution, and it's not discussed and it's not talked about as if it never happened. Okay, so we looked at the 1840s mud flood, the orphan trains, and to follow on that, okay, there were large numbers of buildings that were left after the mud flood, unoccupiable and unoccupied. And so around the turn of the century, 1900 to 1915, there was organized a series of worldwide expositions which cleaned out and used those half-ruined, magnificent buildings of the Tartarians. And when the expositions were over, those buildings were just simply torn down, just simply torn down. And we were never told about it. We were never told about that either, okay? So the Tartarian architecture and the upstairs downstairs mentality of imperialism has never been discussed or confronted by the churches that were standing in the midst of what was going on. 1870. The Masonic directive by Albert Pike, the Grand Commander of the Masons, to stage 3 world wars is not generally taught in school. And the deliberate dumbing down of children to be mindless workers began with Thomas Dewey and Horace Mann, the Milner Kindergarten, the Frankfurt Group, and the robber barons with deep pockets involving themselves in education for the worse to minimize literacy and not maximize it. There was a time when every child in America was literate, knew how to read, knew how to write, could write sentences, not just word salads. But the education system being so top heavy with bureaucrats who were connected to political correctness and connected to the leftist movements, the Frankfurt School, the Marxist School, the Saul Alinsky School, and the tear down Society to Fix It School, well, they have been in charge for a long time. Okay, so the Industrial Revolution was an experience of misery and slavery that was probably, hopefully, never happen again, but you hear stories about what's going on in China that make you wonder. All right. Also in the 1870s, right after what is called a civil war, but one has to wonder if that's actually what it was, the US and the United Kingdom split its laws between common English law versus maritime admiralty statutes. And so most quote citizens of the US or UK are not aware of the fact that they are not full-fledged citizens. They're actually consumable products under the corporate statutes that jurisdictions utilize to resolve disputes and conflicts. Okay. So World War I was the end of the old way of doing things, the end of upstairs, downstairs, the end of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the end of people being able to learn what was true about a lot of things in the past. All right, so then we come up to World War II. World War II occurred, it was staged. The attack against Pearl Harbor was known about long before it happened. And in 1947, when ETs began arriving here, because we seem to be centrally located directly under Sirius, and we're easy to find for these ETs, well, our military began automatically attacking and shooting down ETs that came here. Now, maybe they had reason to, because a certain number of humans have been disappearing without a trace off this world going back centuries. Okay. And so perhaps there's a reason to exhibit a bit of paranoia. But in 1947, shooting them down who didn't seem to have any defenses on them. I mean, the number of UFOs that have been shot down has been prodigious, all right? And what came out of that was a treaty that Eisenhower signed in 1954 with the Greys and the Anunnaki that basically rubber stamped the El-Anu Treaty that said races are to be called if they're backward, and human trafficking and human experimentation are all to be allowed and just simply considered as just business, right? So the Greada Treaty supports the ancient El-Anu Treaty, and that's not taught. Next, we began looking at our moon. And astronomers look at the moon only in terms of white light. They do not examine the moon in terms of UV light or infrared or higher frequencies in UV light. And so they can't see, they don't want to see the city that is up on our moon, which is not, it's about the size of San Francisco, all right? So it's an interdimensional city over our head, but we're taught that it's merely a dead sphere covered with gravel. And that's always the official version. So we don't get the truth about that either. Relationships between the US, UK, and German and Russian governments and ETs are still not disclosed publicly, nor are the terms and conditions of the treaties that we have signed with other races. Preston Nichols was a researcher who worked in the Montauk, New York, on the Philadelphia experiment and subsequent experiments. And in one of his videos, he described his working relationship with an Alpha Draconis, a lizard man. I forget, his name was Karsh or something. But our government has been working with ETs for about 40 years and not telling us what constitutes our relationship to any other race that comes here. Now, after the death of the assassination of JFK by the deep state of the day, the CIA and the Catholic Church and the drug runners, the Zapata Oil Company, okay. After JFK's death, there was a conference set up called the Iron Mountain Conference, okay, that went on for 4 years. And it pretty much embraced the same terms and conditions as the Verona Treaty. It was a reversion from the Constitution and its Bill of Rights back to a uniform commercial code version of the Verona Treaty. And it's not revealed generally. And the outcome of this was that the military adopted a philosophy of absolute secular materialism, in which there is no morality, there's no wrong, there's no right. And the Army War College was revised their ethic by Colonel Michael Aquino to accept torture of prisoners as standard practice. And Colonel Michael Aquino is the priest of the Temple of Set, the Satanist temple in San Francisco. So satanic torture was accepted from the 1980s, which had been forbidden under UN agreements for a long time. Okay, in 1986, there was a Challenger disaster hoax, which has been revealed lately, that's still believed, even though the members of the Challenger crew are still alive and 6 of them are working in academia. All right. The official version of Apollo 11 is still the official version, even though we can tell from the original Apollo 11 video, as well as subsequent Clementine and Magellan images that were taken from behind a picture window on a space vehicle, that NASA never took the pictures in the first place. They had to have been taken possibly by the Anunnaki and not by human NASA photographers. All right. Here's 1993. The World Trade Center attack was staged by the FBI. It went to court. The patsy that got involved in it was sent to prison, but it was proven that the FBI had set the guy up. All right. The staged disappearances and false assassinations of celebrities and elites carries on in full public view. People are said to be disappeared. They are said to have committed suicide. They are said to have been heart attacked. We find out later they're still alive. Apparently, Elvis lived a lot longer than we thought. And other people died several times. I think Nelson Mandela died several times. Joan Rivers, all right, has surfaced again. All right, so it's hard to tell whether what we're seeing is deceit and deception or whether it's a Mandela effect. Here we are in 2020, and the Iran-Contra gun running scandal going back to the 80s has developed with the deep state piracy and treachery to a level of collusion and conspiracy that at this point embraces a great deal of the federal bureaucracy. We have a federal bureaucracy top down in Department of Justice, in FBI, in Department of State that are utilizing defense contracting to profiteer and launder money all over the world and profit themselves personally from proxy wars that they set up so that everybody's making money on the wars from both sides. This is still going on, and President Trump has his hands full to find a way to bring this sedition, this malfeasance, this treason to an end and have it prosecuted probably by a military tribunal. Okay. 2001, the fact the World Trade Center attack, it didn't take down 3 buildings. I have all the pictures. 7 buildings came down. Building 6 was blown up from the interior from the 3rd basement, okay? 1,500 cars up to 7/10 of a mile from the World Trade Center were crisped, okay, as if by dew weapons. All right, so the story that the mainstream media are still propagating about the 9/11 quote attack is still just as wrong as it was the same day. And we're still not any closer to having that major case of insurance fraud ever get prosecuted. So what I'm bringing out to you, and I'm going to put this into a web page with all of my references and all of my links that show that these things actually did happen and are happening. The truth of the matter is that we, the people, are confronting every day on the television and on the mainstream and in mainstream print media and in movies and in video games, we are confronting contrived bullshit. And we've been confronting all this contrived bullshit all these years because the culture says that academia, it has a function under the Enlightenment of defining the theories of the people who do the operations rather than defining the behaviors in causes and effects of the people who create the outcomes. We're still head tripping on theories, and we're still not looking at the behavior of the people whose intention it is under leftist Frankfurt School, Marxist School, Saul Alinsky School, Kalergi School, Clive Empowered, is it Clive Empowered or Powered Climate? Okay, these leftist methods under the rubric of do as thou wilt Luciferianism and the end justifies the means Marxism, they have the effect of merely undermining the valid, legitimate, civil authority of society. They're destroying society in the name of saving it. And they're teaching our children to have no respect for agreements, contracts, covenants, or personal commitments. And this is a hard place for our society to be. And there is a way out. There is a way out. We have to see the handwriting on the wall. That enlightenment is not about defining theories of operation and defining what's in people's heads when in fact their behavior is a matter at issue. We have to look at the behavior of the people in each church, in each religion, okay? You can look at the Sikh religion, and it has a laundry list of 52 behaviors that they promote as a religion, as an ideology. And what you see there is there's no lying, there's no double dealing, there's no protection rackets, and there's no divide and conquer in the Sikh religion, nor in the Baha'i religion, nor in the Quaker religion, or the Amish religion. Because my subjective contacts have a lot to do with the Anunnaki, because I was Enki's great niece, and so I've been able to kind of stay in contact with his way of thinking. The greatest, what we call occult or New Age philosophy of all time, was classical Buddhism, and it has never been surpassed as a method and a means of dealing with confronting suffering and being able to get past suffering. But there are religions now who don't just transcend suffering by their practices and by their official holy book teachings. They promote suffering. They promote illegal and unlawful behaviors that have to be confronted, that have to be reversed and turned into civil behavior for everyone. Everyone deserves to live in a society that is not cruel, that is not exploitive, that is not treacherous, okay, that is not going to do an innocent person harm for no reason. This is the element in our civil society that needs restoration and repair. And we have the means to do that. And the means, when I was at university in the 80s and 90s, was called conflict and dispute analysis and resolution, mediation, arbitration, conciliation. And those methods are well documented, and they work to help individuals and groups, and even large groups, confront and unpack and debrief a dispute or a conflict so that its elements, its behavioral elements can be corrected, its attitude elements can be resolved, and it can be fixed for all time. We do have the methods and means to begin again governing according to causes and effects in time and location. And those methods are not difficult. They're just common sense. Actually, if you've ever read what is in the Mosaic Law, you will be amazed what simple and obvious and common sense directives it gives you. If you want a good outcome, do something good, okay? If you want a good outcome, refrain from doing something bad. If there's somebody doing something bad, stop him. Make him stop. Okay? Teach him the right way, put him back on the path to doing good, or kick him the hell out. Get rid of him. But when the punishment is no longer in scale with the crime, when someone who has a pocket full of weed ends up enslaved for decades, that is not a justice system, that's a slavery system. And that's not what we in the United States, what we in America signed up for when we pledged our allegiance to this country. We did not pledge our allegiance to industrialized slavery, to judiciary bribery, to human trafficking by social services who make $4,000 to $6,000 on each child they can yank out of their natural family and place in a foster care situation. You see, money and cynical bad methods have taken over our ideals. And as Jordan Peterson keeps reminding us, if we want to have a good life, we have to have good goals and good ideals and good objectives and do good for somebody, beginning with doing good for ourselves. All right, so you have now the initial laundry list, and I'm going to work with this some more because the citations and the references that back up this information will be provided. I did the laundry list over several days, and I'm amazed how long it has become. And that's because the philosophy of pedagogy, the philosophy of academia, is to describe theories of operation and define generalizations and talk over people's heads. It's not to resolve, restore, and fix problems in time and location. And that's our path to getting out of this mess. Now, President Trump is well acquainted of problem solving because he's been in real estate for years. He knows how to solve problems. He knows how to when to call the plumber, okay? He knows when to turn off the money. He knows how to identify someone who's ripping us all off, okay? But he's in, like me, he's in his 70s. We're not going to live forever. We have to educate and entrain a generation of new, honest leaders who are willing to bring the secrecy and the double dealing and the treachery and the profiteering on war to an end. It has to be brought to an end. And so that's what I'm here to advocate for today, that we need to bring the profiteering of war to an end. We need the treachery to end, the double dealing, the talking piece, and you know what I mean, pay to play, make lots of money yourselves on selling guns, selling nuclear armaments and stuff, okay? So that's what we're here to do. Steve, I heard you almost break in.
Yeah. Want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break. One song or two?
Two is fine.
Okay, I'll be back when? I'll turn on the music, and when the music is off, then I'll come back on. Okay, sounds good. All right, we can do that. We can do that. All right. So that's what's going on for us today. And I'm going to shut off here at Facebook and pick up at People's Internet Radio. And you know how to get there if you want to. And I would love to see some questions if you have them. We can deal with stuff over there. Thank you for stopping by. Let's see you next time. There we go.